All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Explain Like I'm Five. This is actually our very, very first one. I am Susan, also known lovingly nickname given to me by Nail the 604 Atheist Skeptics of Divine Disbelief. Today, so this is our first Explain Like I'm Five. The basic rundown of it is that we're going to have members of varying communities come on and talk to us about things that they are passionate about, things that they may not get a lot of opportunities to talk about. So today we have the wonderful Nicholas Lamar Soutter. How are you doing today?
I am doing well, thank you. How are you?
I am pretty wonderful, actually. It's a little warm in this house, but it's not so bad. Not so bad. I got a cat on my lap, some corgis in the room, so we're pretty good. So now, tell us a little bit about yourself for anybody who, for some strange reason, might not be familiar with you.
All right. Well, believe me, that's far more people than not. Let's see. Well, okay. I am a writer. I've written a couple of books. Good news, very well received critically. Bad news, kind of a commercially flops, but that's all right. I'm proud of them, and I think I'm working on a couple more. We'll see. We're gonna right now I host In Time, which is a YouTube channel. We cover current events, politics, culture, stuff like that. We have interviews we're going to have on. I'm really excited about this. We're going to have on Osmandius Ramses II and Dr. Richard Carrier to discuss the philosophy of religion. So that's coming up, and we've got a couple other good shows coming up. So that's what I've been doing with most of my time. I also am a teacher. I'm certified in English and social studies for grades 4 through 8 and 9 through 12. Those are several separate certifications, actually, because you have to get certified by subject and for the grades. I taught high school for a while. I also coached. I created the inaugural Westborough High School mock trial team. We would compete against other high schools in trials. Would actually go to Worcester Superior Court and participate. I remember distinctly. We went once, and we were going to the trial room. They'll set aside real trial rooms, and you'll do the trials usually in front of a real judge. And we get into the elevator. I'm in with a whole bunch of students, and there's a guy there in shackles, the whole 9 yards. He's going right next to a prostitute, and I was just like, do, nothing to see here.
It's like, let's all look this way instead.
Yeah, I think today, children, we're going to discuss what is a non-disclosure agreement and how and when do you abide by them.
Yeah. What is attorney-client confidentiality?
Yeah. So it was, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think I missed that aspect the most. It was a tremendous amount of work, but I enjoyed it. And so nowadays, for the most part, I'm streaming a YouTube channel, which is taken up really the vast majority of my time. That and keeping up with two young kids who are trapped at home, thanks to
Oh yeah, with the bonkersness that is the world today.
Yes.
Yeah, funnily enough. So I know specifically when I had asked you, what would you like to talk about? The one thing that sort of had stuck out to me was the fact that that you were an educator, and my older sister is a band director. So she's been a band director and taught kids for probably about 13 years now. And it's always fascinated me how, how people can have such a tremendous amount of patience and understanding because I don't quite possess those skills. I'm not really, that's not my area of expertise. So you're saying you're certified in fourth through 8th grade?
Fourth through 8th and 9th through 12th. So I can do high school so you have to get the separate certifications, and I'm certified for English and social studies, and computer science isn't its own certification, but that's actually what I taught in high school, and I'm qualified to teach it. You just can't in Massachusetts get certified for computer science. There's no actual certification for it. So I was teaching computer science for the most part. I have taught social studies before. Anything from history to law, usually social studies. There you go.
Yeah, sort of the general. Because I remember when I was, in the middle school and all that stuff, doing social studies was just sort of the general like social studies sort of thing. Like, I don't know how else to describe it realistically. What would you say? And it's because this is sort of a two-part question. What would you say was the most rewarding one to teach? Like, of all the stuff that you've taught, not necessarily just, what you officially taught or what you certified for, what has been the most rewarding thing that you have taught?
Yeah, I really do enjoy teaching history. I enjoy it because I think it is a bit of a challenge to make it salient for people. But once they understand why it's important, and once they understand really how it works, usually if it's done right, and you're not going to reach everybody, of course, but usually, people can get almost addicted to it. If possible, I would try to find a way to start out with Christopher Columbus, because I think it's hard not to be fascinated with history once you realize that there's very little that anyone knows about him that's even remotely close to true. I mean, he came home in shackles on his third trip. I mean, he was arrested. His shackles had everything stripped from him. He was so disgraced. And the reality is, he probably realized that he hadn't circumnavigated the globe. He probably knew that when he died, but he had to just keep. I mean, his whole career was based on the fact, not that he had discovered the New World, which he also didn't do. I mean, here's a guy who went from Europe, tried to circumnavigate the world, and instead of hitting the United States, hitting either any of the Americas, didn't hit North America, didn't hit South America, he hit the islands in right in between. That is literally like looking for a haystack and coming up with a needle instead. That's what this guy did. And when you realize just some of the really how much can I swear? It's hard to
as much as you want to. As much. We are not monetized. As much as you want
to. Some of the atrocious fucking things that this guy did. He claimed the money for the bounty for being the first one to see land. He wasn't the first one to see land. He irrefutably was not the first one to see land. He laughed at people who cut themselves on the swords because they didn't understand. And he wrote about this. He was just like, okay, we're trying to figure out how many people we should rape today. And
oh my gosh, he was just generally a douchebag.
Yes, he was.
Like, he was just not. Yeah.
What I think, for me, what I think helps to educate people, helps to get it across isn't just the reality of those stories, but they'll go home and that's one thing as a high school teacher, you have to be a little careful, because I like to push the envelope. That's what gets people to remember it, but that's also what gets calls into the administrators who sit there and say, did you really say that Christopher Columbus was a genocidal maniac? I was like, yeah, I'm a teacher. That's what I'm supposed to say. Why?
Yeah, it's history.
Am I supposed to be lying?
Right.
And there is a problem, because there actually is a curriculum, and it's still in the curriculum. And I've had this talk with my daughter's teachers, because many of them hate what they have to teach about Christopher Columbus, which they know for a fact is a lie. They have to. It's written in the curriculum. They could get fired for not doing it, but nobody can change it's a nightmare. One reason why I don't enjoy teaching so much is just the regulations that really tie your hands. But that and computer science. The interesting thing about computer science, I'm a big thinker. So what that means is, I have to get my head around the big picture first. If I don't have my head around the big picture, I have a very hard time functioning. A lot of people like to go from the small details and work out. No, I go from the big picture, work down. But what that means is, so my first day in computer science, I'm teaching that. I say, okay, because I pushed for computer science being a required class. It has to be if you have math as computer science has to be required. And I'd be in there. Computer science is a tough one, because many of the people in there really don't want to be in there. It's a lot like math. It's like nobody wants to. So I say, okay, what happens if computers all stop working tomorrow? What happens? People, yes to me. The stock market would go down. Yes. Let's talk about that. What runs the stock market? Oh, it's run on computer. Yes, it's run on computers. So what happens to now? On a modern car, what do you think runs most modern car? Ooh, so cars aren't going to work.
Yeah.
Oh, trucks aren't going to work. You're not going to be able to get food into cities. You're not going to. So let's start to really talk about. And so we spend the first 10 minutes talking about what it would realistically look like if every computer stopped running. People they don't look at it that way. They don't think about that. But that's the first 10 minutes of my introduction into any computer science class. I say, okay, that's where we stand. Now, is our dependence on computers going to become bigger or smaller over time? And we're just like, yeah, bigger. It's going to get worse. Okay. Who here doesn't want to understand at least the basics of how these things operate? Because you will be a slave to them in some way or another most of your life. You will be a slave to your own ignorance if you can't do the basic, this is how it works, this is how you talk to the thing.
Right.
It's a pain in the neck. Nobody wants to do it, but this is how it's done. And you're going to need these skills, period. Do you want to have them or not? Because I don't care whether you're an artist. I don't care whether you're a musician. I don't care if you want to be president of the United States. You're going to have to be able to do it.
Yeah, but we see how that's gone with the president of the United States.
Yeah, I should have left that one out. I didn't mean to disgrace the students, but at any rate, so that's I enjoy those kinds of discussions, and I enjoy trying to tie these things to the larger. It does need patience, but if you see it as a task, and if you see it as just sort of this multifaceted task, and if you see what happens at the end when you get students who click with it, and I had students. I had students who said, "Oh, Nick, Mr. Soutter, I just signed up for this class." I was like, "Oh, okay, great." And they had just actually added a new class. I had no idea what even the class was, and I had a student sign up for it. They're like, "Oh, what is this class?" I was like, "I don't know." She's like, "Why are you asking me? Like, you're teaching." I was like, I don't dictate what I teach. They just tell me to teach these things. It's like, wait a minute. If you don't know, why'd you sign up? They're like, well, because you're teaching it. And that just always it's a bit of a responsibility. It's a little weird, but it's like when you have students who like really enjoy who enjoy how you teach enough that I think the how is 10 times more important than the what. If you got the how right, the what becomes a lot easier.
Yeah. How did you find that, your teaching style evolved as time went on? Did you start out, thinking, I'm gonna do this specific thing and I'm gonna aim, to meet these specific goals, and then you're just all like, I'm gonna do what works? Like, how did you evolved?
I think I lost confidence over time. So I think when I first started out, I was like, oh, this is easy. I can teach anybody anything. And then you reach students that for some reason you can't read. You can't. And I started out when I was in high school. I was doing tutoring at the high school level, and even for college, I was tutoring people who were preparing for their at Clark University, who were preparing for their computer science finals, and I was tutoring them while I was in high school. And when you're tutoring, it's just one-on-one, so it sort of seems like, wow, I can, and usually you're tutoring people who, for some reason, really do want to learn the material, or they may hate it, but they've got an issue, they're going to fail, they're going to whatever, so they'll listen. Then once I started really teaching high school, I was just like, okay, this is a lot harder. There are students you're not going to reach. There's students who genuinely don't care and who are never going to care for one reason or another. They either may not care about school, they may just not care about your topic. And so you encounter enough of a variety of people that I had to learn strategies for dealing with certain kinds of people that are well outside of what I'm normally good at. Mm-hmm. Had to learn to work with others. I am not a work with others kind of person in many respects. I'm just not. And if you take a look at my choice of professions nowadays, teachers are more integrated with each other. They're still not very much, but they are more so than writer. Okay. That's me in the computer. That's me sitting down, writing for however long. And teacher, well, that's usually thought of as a reasonably solitary profession. I tend to choose the solitary one. So I think learning to work with other teachers and other teachers who, in some cases, if they had become jaded, I found that I annoyed the fuck out of those teachers. And there's more than a few. And then not just teachers who were jaded, but ones who were actually spectacularly good, but used very different methods than I do. I'm not a technical teacher. I don't sit down and like count every point, and make sure that everything is specifically exactly the way, and then it all goes into the grade sheet that does this. And there were teachers who did it that way and were very successful. They were successful with a different kind of student, but those are the ones that I couldn't. So sort of trying to learn to be able to adapt to those kinds of things was difficult, and I grew, but I just sort of also realized I had always thought that if I try hard enough, I can reach anybody and I can always be successful. Nope. There are some that, and there are some who are, by the way, good kids and good students, but don't get me. And the ones who actually have to start with the details and grow into the larger, we have communication issues. It's just, I can't,
Yeah, that's definitely me. I took there's this little quiz that I took that's basically like, what's your working style and what's your, your learning style and stuff. And the big thing was, you are detail oriented, and some people might call you nitpicky. And I'm just like, yeah, I've gotten that before.
Well, that doesn't sound like me. With me, it's like a few people maybe haven't in my life. In my entire life, I haven't been called out once or twice. Yeah. Okay. No, I get that. So
So have you you were talking about do the writing stuff. Have you ever really like sat down and like sort of done it like editing stuff? I know that's totally like off topic entirely, but like I imagine writing and editing are like two totally different things. And editing, in a sense, is sort of like, okay, this is what you want to do instead. Like you want to sort of go in a slightly different direction and stuff. Have you done that sort of thing?
Oh well, yeah. I wouldn't have finished any books if I hadn't. You have to. The books, I mean, the fact that they've got it was a lot of editing, and I'd really love to just, sit there and say, okay, I'll pay you $1,000 to have somebody edit it. But the problem is, if they don't really, it's one of those. I was actually talking with a friend of mine earlier today about, every job has a part that sucks about it and that you hate to do. If you're lucky, you find a job that you love, but there's no job that you like so much that there isn't stuff that's difficult about it. For me, it's the editing. I had to just learn by rote how to do certain things. And what I'll do when I'm editing is I will usually play music. One of the ones I like, I saw your tattoo there, so I'm going to suspect.
Yeah, it's like I've got the Star Wars one and the Watchmen one. So.
Okay, so you Prelude to War, Battlestar Galactica, no, you never got into it.
No, I never did. My parents both like, Star Trek, of course, because my parents are big Trekkies, and then my mom watched Battlestar Galactica. There was another one she watched. It wasn't BSG. What was the other one? There was another one that she watched, but like that wasn't, that sort of wasn't quite my fandom stuff. So
there's the music to the new one I've always really liked. The new one, meaning, I mean, it's not, you understand what I'm saying. I really like the music to that, and there's one that's just drums and it builds up, and I think it was taiko drums that they use. I always like, so I'll play something that I can play repetitively, and I just play it over and over and over and over and over. And there's something about that repetitive nature. I don't know what it's doing to me psychologically. It's doing something, but whatever it is, it may be that somehow that repetitive nature suppresses my desire to or my almost compulsive need to go into the big picture, and I can just sit and edit. So, but what I tell people when I'm teaching writing, one of the things I say is, okay, this is why drafting is important. Your first draft, don't ever edit. Don't edit anything. I don't care. I don't care. Don't edit it for any reason. Just keep writing. Don't stop. If you can't find the right word, doesn't matter. If you don't know somebody's name, my instinct is, I'm going to stop here until I figure out the name. Nope. Just type in XYZ, whatever, move forward. Just be moving forward until it's done. Once it's done, you can go back and edit it. But it's very easy to go from a creative mode to an editing mode. It's very easy to do that. You can slip into it just like that. But to go from the editing mode back to the creative mode, if you're experienced and if you're practiced, can still take as long as 10 minutes. So think about this for a second. Every time you stop to get the name, you have to take the time just to get the name. And then once you've solved whatever problem, then you can go back, but you're completely out of the flow of the writing. You're not creating anymore. So I binge write for weeks or even a month or two at a time. Then I go back and I edit, and that's how I do it. You have to parse it out. You really have to. And I'm not aware of any writer that I've ever met or heard of that actually doesn't really do it that way. And I think there are a lot of reasons for it. Hard to imagine how you could.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So and just to let y'all know, if there's anybody in the audience who has any questions on anything, or if there's anything that you want to ask, just feel free to stick it in the chat. I'll find a way to either highlight it or remember it or something.
Yeah, there was a guy, Titan something or other, who was like, Nick involved in a stream. It's only 2 minutes left. Yeah, I don't know.
I think I'm also a little notorious for always being like, there's something that happens at the last second that's always like, oh my God, how do I handle this? But we are far less experienced on our channel.
Yeah, and we still, that's the joke on our channel, is it's in time, not on time.
I like it. I learned from my middle school band director, if you're earlier on time, if you're on time, you're late. So I'm always like, I try to get to stuff super early and everything. That's sort of something that stuck with me. I've had some teachers in my life that they're people that I've just remembered, and it's not necessarily because they've been I've necessarily learned, how the universe works from them, but it's been that they've had, sort of an effect on me and my view on the world and stuff, specifically my band director. And as silly as that sounds, but I was a big band nerd when I was in middle school and high school, like humongous band nerd. And a lot of that was, sort of fostered by Mr. Wheeler. His name's Jim Wheeler. Mr. Wheeler's, not just love for music and love for, his students. It was sort of like he just loved what he did. And he was not everyone's cup of tea, that's for sure. But he and my dad got along really well. And, so he was a little gruff to some people, but to those he really, saw the potential in. He was very much like, I'm gonna teach you. I'm gonna really go for this. So, we do have a question in the chat.
I was gonna.
Go ahead.
Well, I think teachers. I'm gonna try to hide the name here. This was a handwritten note that I had gotten from one of my students that I'm actually immensely proud of. Dear Mr. Soutter, wanted to let you know I just graduated from American University in Washington with a degree in politics. I had the opportunity to study at the London School of Economics and work with the House of Representatives. Truly, none of this would have been possible without you. You're one of the most significant mentors I've ever had, and your teaching, guidance, and encouragement have had a profound impact on my life.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, so I keep it where I can see it, and those are both. They really help, and they are important. They're also a little heartbreaking because, of course, I'm not teaching anymore. So we don't pay teachers enough, and I think teacher pay is actually profoundly misunderstood in this country. It's much higher than most people think it is, actually. Then they say, well, and then besides the fact that you don't have to work summers, and you do have to work summers, actually, because that's when curriculum gets written. Yeah, I mean, it's insane. So I haven't done it in a while, but you get something like that, and it makes a lot of the suffering worth it. But people also think that's what it should be about, and of course it can't be. So it's a tough. You get those, and you realize you're not teaching anymore. But somebody took the time, of course, to handwrite that and send it to you, and in part, it's skill, and I accomplished something. In part, you're lucky that you have students who are who are willing to take the time to say something like that.
Yeah,
so I like
the students who get it.
Yeah,
like the students who really are, the ones that are the reason you do it. I like that.
So I think you had a question. I didn't want to.
Yes. So we do have a question in the chat here. What do you recommend to a grad student trying to increase productivity in this pandemic-induced virtual learning environment? So many distractions.
Good question. 1, install a new browser. Have that browser, whether it's was it Opera or Oprah, however it's pronounced. It has to be a good modern one. Firefox will work too, but one that you're going to do nothing but schoolwork on. Make sure that that browser you've either deliberately locked out, and there are tons of apps for doing this. You've deliberately locked out anything outside of that. You don't let it go to anything other than the education sites that you need. Here's the thing. It only takes a split second to get distracted, but you can recover from that in a very short period of time, as long as you're not able to actually do something in that period. So it's actually, every now and then, let's talk alcoholics. If you're having a sudden craving, the funny thing is, it's actually not that hard to beat those cravings. What's hard is the first 5 minutes. Once that 5 minutes is done, poof, your brain's onto something else. So the question is 5 minutes. Same thing here. It's a much shorter period of time. So if you would have to actually launch a new browser and get the windows to come up and do all this other thing, that's usually enough time to reduce a significant amount of the temptation you're going to have. So have its own, a different browser, Edge, whatever you want to use that works for that. Make sure that you actually lock out YouTube, lock out anything you don't want to use, and then you'll sit there and say, "Oh shoot, I want to see this on Twitter." Like, "Oh, I can't."
Yeah,
okay,
it's not allowed. It's not allowed.
I'd have to go open up a different thing, and believe it or not, just that period of time that it takes, and that also grounds you. Then you sit there and say, "Okay, you know what? I'll just get distracted if I do that anyway." Something to snap you back into. It's just like, don't be the ferret on crack cocaine. You know, sit there. So that's one of the things I would do. I think there's a whole bunch of others, but I think that's the best way to increase productivity. I will also say this. Take frequent breaks. Try to schedule them. I don't stick to a schedule strictly. So it's like if the bell goes off, okay, there's some people who need to do that. I don't, but I would say try not to do more than half hour at a time. I absolutely love working for more than a half hour at a time, but for learning in particular, one of the things that they've discovered is, and this is interesting, and this works. This is insane. This works. You most remember the beginning and the end of any block of period where you're learning. So if you have a 1 hour class and then they measure how much you're learning, you can see it's an inverse bell curve. It just goes down in the middle of the class. You forget almost everything that's in the middle of the class and then back up again to the top. So you'll remember the first 5 minutes the best, the last 5 minutes the best, and everything in between is just down, 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 down until the middle. Okay, but here's the interesting thing. That happens no matter how long that period is. So if you do 15 or 20 minute, or let's say 1/2 hour blocks, take a break, get something to eat, get something to drink, just to do something that's just going to be a 5 minute break. You're going to sit there and say, well, I'm losing a lot of time in between because of all these breaks. Yeah, but you're remembering more because that curve still works. So if you do a half, instead of doing like, and because I get focused that way, I would much rather sit for 8 hours straight and do nothing but I'll still remember best the first hour of that, the last hour of that, but you'll just still see this now. If instead I do 20 minutes and then a 5 minute break, 20 minutes, 5 minute break, 20 minutes, 5 minute break, you remember the first and last minute or two best of each of those 20 minute segments.
Yeah.
So now you have far more that you're remembering, and those dips actually get far less. The dips aren't nearly as small. So, frequent breaks, set a timer just to have it go for every 20 minutes. The first couple of days is going to be annoying and it's not going to work, but you will train your brain to sort of think that way. And then the thing that'll happen is you'll have more energy, and you'll have, it's one of those things that it's a life hack. It's a brain hack.
Yeah.
It works great. Just takes a little practice.
Yeah. Yeah. And once you sort of learn how to train your brain, basically, it very much,
now this is
flow.
That's Jim Majors. He's a friend of mine, so I'll actually add one other tip, which is have a buddy, someone named Nick maybe, with a cattle prod behind you, and every time you get distracted, and then it just becomes a matter of amperage. It's not volts. People get confused. It's not the volts, Jim. It's the amperage. And I happen to know how much is needed. I will hook you up. I would do it for free. I'll pay you to let me do it. Just saying.
That's how you can, know that you enjoy it, is when you're just all like, I'll do it for free, but pay me if you really want to.
That's work that I would do for free. Yeah, I would. Nice. I would enjoy that.
Nice. If anybody ever has any other questions or anything, just be sure to drop them in the chat. We'll sort of get them as we go. Trying to think of what else. Well, let's see. So the student that wrote you the letter was talking about, thank you for your influence and teaching me about, and they're going to like go and work for the house and stuff. You had said when we were sort of emailing back and forth that you did some political operative stuff. And I know this is totally like,
okay. This is my ideal interview, but please continue.
But I love this stuff. You have done so many interesting things. So I just it's, I don't want it to necessarily just be, necessarily one thing. Talk about the political operative stuff, because I want to hear all about that.
I enjoyed that a lot. That was one of my favorites. I almost became a professional. I came very close. I had an offer to write for the Obama campaign. I had to go to Chicago to do it. I was offered on the rapid response team, which is insane work. It's spectacular. I so wanted to do it. So to start at the beginning, I started with, I want to say Jim Carrey. Wow, no, Carrey. What's his name? Who got swift-boarded? John Kerry. Thank you. And it was just volunteer work. That's it. It was just volunteer, door knocking, door to door. And as I did more campaigns, people got to know me, and I kind of rose through the ranks. And the most recent that I came close to in the last election, the Massachusetts DNC actually called me, and I'm sitting there going like, how did you guys get this? Because it's been a while. Last time I actually did any political operative work was in Connecticut. So I wanted to know how they actually do something in Connecticut. I said, wait, I think they moved. Get him. There was a man here who was running for a new House seat, and it looked like the Republican Party was putting up some serious opposition. And I actually sort of disagreed with the strategy that he was doing. I sat down and talked with him. He I think was at first looking for a campaign manager, and then we ended up. I was just like, he was going to be sticking with the one he had anyway. But we got to, at any rate. So by the time the height of it was probably the primaries in Connecticut. I was the district coordinator for I want to say now the 2nd congressional district. It has to be the 2nd congressional district and that was, we just turned my house into the campaign headquarters, and we had printers running 24/7. We're just cutting turf, and then we'd have people come by and say, okay, you guys are going here. We're planning strategy. We were responsible for getting, messaging the whole 9 yards. I remember the first phone call I got on the right thing. I was thrilled. People are sitting there going, Nick, Obama's minister said, "Goddamn America." I was just like, okay, and like, no, Nick, this is serious. I was like, it's not serious, guys. Like, I wish it was serious, because I said, if it's serious, we get to take Islam off the table. I said, anybody who tells me that I'm taking Islam off the table, if they do that, I'm like, it's not going to work that way, Nick. I said, it's going to work that way. I didn't call that one quite right. We spent a lot of time on that one, but it was, and I think probably my favorite, but it was one of those that used every skill set I have. And I like things that use every skill set I have. And on the YouTube stuff actually does that, because when you're interviewing people, you have to draw deep in your well of things that you can do. So that's one of the reasons I do enjoy it's just like, okay, I'm a sponge for learning new information, and I enjoy it. Actually, if the ideal job for me would be student, just learning shit. By the time I graduated high school, I spoke Russian, Japanese, and Spanish. Wow. I had written 4 full-length novels. I had been doing tutoring. I've been doing I was constantly just absorbing shit. So my brain doesn't work as well as it used to. But at any rate, so when I was doing the Obama campaign, we actually started remote calling from my house to Nevada, and the reason was because I spoke Spanish and we had Spanish volunteers. But this is Connecticut. The Spanish volunteers can't go door to door, and so I'm trying to figure out how to solve this problem. I said, wait a minute. If we hook into the DNC, they have all the Spanish-speaking numbers. They use a program called Vote Builder, which became very famous later on. But it's like, I said, we're just going to call. So we're going to call Nevada. We're going to get anyone who's got a cell phone. And if you're out volunteering for us, if you're willing to leave your cell phone here, we just set one room, and we had like 10 people crammed in calling people who only spoke Spanish in Nevada to pitch for Obama, because that was so. And there was all this problem solving and all this work, and I really enjoyed it. I was gonna say I got to meet him. I was in a room with him twice, which was. But then we had. It was a tremendous amount of fun. I ended up the field director for Connecticut, and I got to be pretty good friends. And that was also just a bizarre thing, because technically, as the field director, she's my boss, except in the 2nd Congressional District, where I was her boss. So it's just sort of like, okay, are you talking as the boss or as the? And so we but she was really great, and then she submitted some of my work without telling me. To the Obama campaign was starting to staff up for the general election. Connecticut, the only problem we had was can he beat Hillary. Once that was done, and working as a political operative is always very bizarre, because it's really intense. You're sleeping 3 hours, and I was doing polling work. I remember one time, and we came across an accident. Somebody don't want to get too graphic, but somebody going through the windshield of a car. And it's one of those things, we got out, we sort of tried to help, but then it's like, we don't have time to even stop and sit. It's election day. We're checking to make sure that there isn't fraud at the polls.
Yeah.
An entire national campaign is like, and we're all in shell shock because we've seen this. The guy was sitting there walking around looking for a shoe. He didn't realize he was holding it. And we stood until they came, and then it's just sort of like, okay, we did this, we're moving.
Yeah.
It's just nonstop. It's just a lot of adrenaline. But anyway, she sent my work to the national offices, and they said, here's what we're gonna do. They said it was this insider thing. Only people who had their work submitted, it got approved, and they said, we're gonna call you. We're gonna tell you something that just got said about Obama, and you have 10 minutes to come up with a reply in Obama's writing style, and it has to be indistinguishable. Between something that indistinguishable between something Obama would say and that you had written. It's your job to write as Obama. It's going to be, quote, his reply to whatever they say. So I'm just waiting for the call, and I'm reading everything Obama's ever written, just trying to get. I mean, I've heard it so many times. I've been in the room. I've been in when he's like talking. I got to be that was a delight. I was in the VIP section for the Obama campaign for when he was in Connecticut with the Kennedys, Caroline Kennedy, Ted Kennedy, a whole bunch of other just lions of the whole thing. Now, of course, if you're in the VIP section, do you know where the VIP section is in a major campaign?
No.
It's in the back. It's behind the candidate. You can't see the candidate. I mean, you can see him, but he's got his back to you. The reason is because they want everyone to see the VIPs. So when the cameras are going, so I'm sitting with senators and all these other people. They want everyone to see the most important people are placed behind the candidate, and they can't see a thing. And I was thrilled. Don't get me wrong. I was just, well, yeah, this is a congressman. This is like, oh, hey, great to meet you. But it was a little weird because you don't see it. You see his back, and he's just like, and I'm going to tell you that he's just doing this whole thing, and you're just like, and it's great. But they always turn and they make sure they give love to the VIP section, So I just like it. He recognized me because I had just seen him earlier. It's just giving me a wave. I was like, oh my god. So yeah, I did. I absolutely I was fangirling all over him. But they gave me the call. I did the prompt, and they said, "That's it. You went up. You're up." And so, what the rapid response team is anytime, day or night, that bad press comes out or something that the Republicans put something out, we reply, and we reply within 15 minutes, if at all possible. And the reply has to be good. So you have to know all his issues. You have to know the responses to everything, and you have to be able to write like him. And then they put out the response. And that's it. It goes out on his Twitter account or however it's going to get done. So now my wife was at that point like 7 or 8 months pregnant. So I told her naturally, I'll send you 20. You know, she didn't find that as funny as I did. At any rate, I stayed home. Wait, I got an invitation to the 11th inaugural ball of 12.
Mhm.
The Midwest campaign finance director was a really great guy, and he and I knew each other from New Hampshire, which was really fucking crazy because I remember, oh God, I remember New Hampshire. We worked our asses off. Everything was great in New Hampshire. I'm driving home. I said goodbye to everybody. And you build fast friends here because it's an intense thing. We bumped into the Hillary campaign. They were defeated in New Hampshire like there's no tomorrow. It's just their morale was low. They were dumpster diving, and we had to destroy everything. We had to destroy everything because they were actually dumpster diving and getting materials. So when you leave an office, everything just has to be destroyed. Yeah, I had never seen that before. We were really, everybody was displeased with the tactics. Her campaign director had been turned down as a campaign director for Obama.
Mm-hmm.
So we're leaving. We're feeling great about it. And it's like, then she has this crying incident, and she's, you know, and it's just like, all of a sudden we start to see the numbers come in. We're like, how could we lose this? And we lost it. But the Midwest campaign finance director became a good friend of mine. He's just like, I will get you tickets. I swear to God, and he came through. We got tickets to the inaugural ball. But we, again, pregnant.
Yeah, priorities. Priorities.
Well, that's what I said, but she said I couldn't go anyway.
Ah.
Yeah.
But I mean, you made the right choice in that sense. So. Oh yeah. So and
I will interrupt. So that's this bookcase. I talk about this every now and then. I stopped talking about it now because there's trinkets in there from all sorts of everything. In my mock trial team got me a Make Donald Trump Again hat and signed that. Things from St. Croix. The blunderbuss that almost got me shot at Heathrow Airport. But up there is a letter from Obama, which was just a really nice. You know, I mean, I'm sure it was, you know, this auto thing. Everybody gets a letter like that. But I miss it, and I'd kind of like to go back to it. But it's, yeah, the YouTube burnout rate is really, really high, and it's stressful. And a friend of mine, you know, had to take a break from it. But as hard as it is, it's nothing like campaigning.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah. So as I always tell people when we're talking about political campaigns and stuff, Nathaniel actually, who, in case people don't know, is not only the other half of Divine Disbelief, but also my wonderful partner. Nathaniel worked for the Beto campaign when he was running for Senate against Ted Cruz. And I remember before we had started dating, I had gone block walking with them a couple times, and, you know, I'd done a little bit of volunteering with it and everything. And I remember, even just as a volunteer, you know, you're feeling, you know, just a small portion of the energy and the stress that people are under, you know, so I can only imagine how intense it must be when you're really on the front lines for that sort of thing. It just must be, you know, does it do you were talking about the burnout stuff. Does it take a lot of like ill effects on the health too?
Yes. But they're short term. That was actually, and I meant to get to that too. The weirdest thing about it, this is just a really weird thing. It's always, there's a feeling that I can't describe. That's the day of the election, and or there's a GOTV, get out the vote, making sure everybody goes. But when it was New Hampshire, I was leaving New Hampshire. It was the day of the election. There's nothing I can do. So you just sort of, all this work just comes to one day. But the interesting thing is, the next day, everybody you know and everybody you're friends with is out of work. They're all unemployed. Mm-hmm. Done. And it's very rude to, and nobody really starts thinking about the next job. Everybody knows there has to be a next job. You have to go on to something. But it's like the day after election day, it's all of a sudden, it's the most bizarre feeling. You've gone from almost no sleep at all to so you can do whatever you like and nobody cares. Nobody, all your friends are this way. That's the other thing is, this has happened to everybody you know, all at the same time.
Yeah.
So, but the only other one, just because this was one of my, I remember I was about to go to bed, and then I got a call from, I think it was the third district. It was whatever district's Hartford's in, and they lost their entire network. Their computer network went down. So we're like, okay, is it fixable? And they said, actually, we don't think it's fixable in the next 3 or 4 days. So we're like, okay, so they can't cut turf, they can't do anything. So I was just like, we have to do it. No. So every night then, so I didn't go to sleep. I just started cutting their turf, and I don't know anybody, I have access to all the data. So we just do it, and then we'd get 2 boxes worth of, legal boxes. Somebody would come by at 6 a.m., take it over down to the 3rd. But it was just sort of like, I think I have the kind of personality that I do blossom in a crisis. And you got to be a little careful with people who have those kinds of personalities, because they will actually create crises in order to, and that you can get into toxic situations. I know people, and unfortunately, I easily make friends with people who are like that, because it works for me too. You know what I mean? So it's just something I have to be. Yeah. So I just keep an eye on it. But anyways, I think it is the perpetual crisis nature of it. But the good news is, with YouTube, you don't actually get the break. You take a break on YouTube, all of a sudden you're screwed in the algorithms, you're this or that. So it's just the nice thing about this is, the day after the election, there's just this huge, it's a bizarre feeling, but it's just like, you're done. Everybody you know is done. Yeah. You have nothing to talk to with any of these people anymore, really, because it's just all. So I loved it dearly. I've considered kind of half going back to it. Like I said, they needed a campaign manager for a guy up here, and I guess I was actually at the top of the list, which is, I think it was actually that same lady from the Obama for America. I think the field director said, "Hey, wait a minute, you guys, I think Nick moved there," and sure enough, and they just called out to me. And I talked to the guy and gave him what help I could. I was an advisor for a little while, and he won, so everything's good.
Yeah. So we have another question, and this one does make me laugh a little bit because I was there for this. Nick is somebody who worked a campaign. How would you recommend sending yourself to the hospital? Asking for a friend, who is me. I'm the friend. And I can tell you this happened twice.
What happened?
So the first time that he went, he was having some pain. He was having like gallstones and stuff. And he actually, because they were like, I think it was during early voting and, still in the middle of everything. And he checked himself out of the hospital in order to get back into it. So then it was December 1st. He woke up and he's just like, shit, I have to go to the hospital. And I was just all like, what's going on? And he's just all like, I think it's the same thing as last time. I think it's my gallbladder. So we went to the hospital, and yes, it turned out it was his gallbladder. But the problem is because, it was December 1st of 2018. And, his health insurance ran out at the end of the month of November. It was one of those like, oh, shit, well, hospital bills and stuff. So, he ended up having to get his gallbladder out, during that second hospital visit. And I'm convinced a lot of that was because of the stress of the campaign. I'm convinced. He might be convinced as well. I'm not entirely sure. He probably is. I'm sitting here talking for him.
The campaigns lead to a phenomenal amount of stress. I have to be comfortable with that level of stress to be able to manage it for any length of time, and it's not easy. One of the things is, because what you realize is, well, everybody below you and everybody above you is counting on you. So if you're managing, if you're a district coordinator, you got people below you who are dependent on you, and then the people who are above you are counting on you to get all that. And there's a time limit. There's nothing you can do to change it. You don't get to call up Congress and say, listen, I'm going to be a little late with my report today. Can I get that in next week? The election's going to happen no matter what you do. Stuff's going wrong all the time, and every campaign that I've ever been on is overextended. That's their general operating is overextended, and the reason is because everyone else that they're fighting is overextended too. The money's tight, so they're trying to, and there's always, and then the other thing that people don't realize is you end up also, you're not just working for that candidate, you're working for the entire ticket, and that includes all the downvotes. So what that means is, one of the things, and I hated doing this, and I got an earful, but this is what happens, which is at one point Joe Courtney's campaign. Joe Courtney was the second congressional, he was the congressman for the 2nd district. And they're like, hey, we want to meet with you guys. I was like, okay, sure. So we go and meet. And one of the things that I didn't realize was happening was a lot of our volunteers didn't like Courtney. So now he was a Democrat, he was on the ticket, but they would, and you try to share volunteers between local campaigns because that's how you're going to get, yeah. And they were livid. And they're like, why are your guys not putting out Courtney signs? Why are your guys, they're like, and they said this, they were frank about it, but it's true. They're like, listen, one of the reasons people have coattails is for other people to ride them. Yeah. He is the most popular candidate ever to come along in history. We need this help. Why are you guys withholding it? I didn't realize there was no conscious effort to withhold it. Right. But nonetheless, so you got people on your own team and then you get people, of course, who disagree with strategy, people who disagree with, and there are a number of ones that I called right that I'm proud of. I called the Walter Wright thing. I got so dead wrong, or the Pastor Wright, Reverend Wright. Yeah. I mean, I got, and there are people who are still pissed at me for that one, actually, because they're just like, you said don't worry about it, and I told you it was going to be a problem. I was like, yeah, that was like 10 years ago. Can we move on?
It's like other stuff has happened since then.
But everybody wants it to work, and everybody's desperate for it to work, and it becomes kind of life or death. And the other thing you do realize is, I'll do you. Well, you may or may not. I appreciate that. I don't know, but we'll see. Because I was going to do the pitch I used to do when I was doing door to door. But at any rate, everybody wants it to work. Yeah. And in order to keep that passion too, you magnify it. So suddenly it's life or death. If Obama doesn't get into office, if it ends up being McCain, and then, oh my God, he dies, and Palin, do you know what's going to happen to the U.S.? Now the U.S. looks a lot more resilient. I mean, the U.S. is really suffering right now. But Jesus, I'd take Palin over Trump any day.
At this point, it's like, geez, like,
yeah,
yeah, oh yeah. So one, we're coming up on almost an hour, but there is one thing about the political stuff I did want to ask you, as silly as it sounds. It is like an ideal sort of thing. If you could have worked on any campaign, like whether it be, federal or state or, strictly local level, what would you have liked to work on? Like as a serious involvement?
That's a really good question. I will have to tell you, I would want it to be a candidate. Obviously, I like, and there've been a number that I've liked. Against an opponent that I like. Because in my view, that's kind of what makes it interesting, and that's what makes it the challenge. I liked McCain. I remember the day he picked Palin, I said, we're done. I was like, we're done. We still have to work. I mean, don't get me wrong, but all of a sudden it's just like, okay, that's the tipping point. I said, we're done. As long as we don't screw something up, this is over.
Yeah.
So I thought it was a joke when somebody first told me he had picked Palin. And I could see what he was doing and how and why, but I was just sitting there going like, that was a miscalculation. That was a decision he made on his own against his advisors. I understand why he did it, but he was fucking wrong. And I was just like, yes. Yeah. Oh, my God.
That was such a mess.
Oh.
Just a mess. But, it was really, really great for Tina Fey.
Like, it made Tina Fey's career. And she was good even before it, but boy, I could see Russia from my house.
Yeah, she came, she was already doing 30 Rock at that time. So she went from 30 Rock to an SNL, back to SNL just for the Palin stuff, and I'm just like, that's glorious, and I love her.
I'll tell you, I would have actually liked the Gore campaign. I would have liked the Gore campaign. Not even so. Gore is dry, but he was good, and he had what he needed from Clinton. The Clinton campaign, I think I would have liked, but there was a little mud there that I'm not a huge fan of that kind of thing. I think the Sanders campaign reached out to me when he was first going, and they wanted me to go. I like that campaign, and I like him as a candidate. I don't know that I would want to be on that. If it was him, I would do it. I would come out of quasi-retirement or whatever I am to oppose, and to if it were possible. I mean, I'm in Massachusetts, so Trump's not going to win Massachusetts. So I'd have to either go somewhere or just do it remote, which is doable. Nightmare. So I can't think of the reason I like Sanders. I'd like to see him win, but that was not a campaign. Well, I don't know. I can't explain it right now. It was a great question, so it's like I have a verbal processor. I'm going to have to sit here and just stammer while I think about it. The reality is, I think that campaign is almost a little too idealistic, and to the point where it would hinder. Yeah. Okay. He calls himself a socialist. And I would sit there and say, listen, I understand why you're using that word. There's some truth to it. But the reality is the way Americans define that term, that's not true. That simply isn't true.
Yeah.
And since that's your audience, you cannot use language that your audience will not understand. And that's another example. Bring it back to teaching, which is I try to figure out when I'm teaching, and I've taught to different groups from different socioeconomic classes, different states. The first thing I try to do is figure out what language do I have to use to speak to them, and it's the entire language. It's someone may go as a dialect or whatever, but I like to refer to it and think of it as a language because it's how you act, it's how you move, it's the gestalt of everything that you're doing and talking. When I talk to people from the South, specifically, like just a while ago, I had a conversation with someone from New Mexico. I always use the word theory to represent a hypothesis. I don't say hypothesis, I say theory. I always say theory. Why? Because if I say hypothesis, well, that's more accurate. And as a teacher, you'd say, I want to be as accurate as possible. No, because if I have a level of accuracy beyond that which they could appreciate, he's going to think I'm trying to be some ivory tower elite. Well, my hypothesis is X, Y. No. No. You have to be able to connect. Being able to connect also means speaking the same language. Another great example, just, you want to, and most people know this isn't a big thing, but you go get your car fixed at a garage. The mechanic is always going to try to shake your hand. Always going to try to shake your hand. Yeah. The reason is he wants to see more about you and what language you speak. Now, his hand's going to be greasy. He's going to have all that black, First thing I do always, in fact, I sometimes just try to beat him to it and just extend my hand and beat him to it, because that's how he knows I'm not afraid of the grease. I'm not afraid of him, and I'm someone he can talk to.
Yeah, it's a connection.
And it seems like it's a minor thing, but it's so. I think we have to change how we talk to connect with our audience. It's the danger. You're going to misrepresent it. You're going to get it wrong. But I think the chances that you're going to get it wrong are far less than the damage caused just by being stagnant the whole time and having a one size fits all approach. Yeah. So and then why was I getting to this? We were talking. Oh yeah, Bernie won't do that. He won't adjust his language to meet the needs of the American voter. Well, that's a problem because that is their needs. Yeah. They need you. If you're going to, nobody's asking you to lie. Nobody's asking you to misrepresent something. They're asking you to speak in the language that they are using in a way that they understand, so they get your ideas clearly. There is no one set of words that mean the same thing to anybody. Right. So you're not going to be accurate, but you'll be more accurate that way than just well, I'm a democratic socialist. Okay, it's over. It's over because we spent the entire 80s talking about how socialism is the fruits of the devil, and we did that so we could beat the Soviets, and we had the energy to do that. That's done, but you haven't gotten that out of the public consciousness. So you're done.
Yeah, and then there's the whole, the right using socialist as like a dog whistle, sort of thing, when it's like socialism and the left. And yes, I am purposefully saying that the way that Nathaniel does because it's really entertaining. Does that. But yeah. Well, we're coming up at about an hour. What is it that you would like to plug? Where can we find you? What can we do for you? How can we support you?
So I have a YouTube channel. It's called In Time. It's an educational show. We do a lot of different things to sort of reach that educational goal. We usually do like interviews and discussions on topics. Sometimes they're recurring. We have a recurring series on philosophy. We have a recurring series on civics. We now have a recurring series on writing. We also cover breaking news. So, if something happens at 2 a.m. that's a national story, we're usually covering it. The latest shooting, we were covering the riots that fell out from that. And we have 6 live streams going in the window, and we're just seeing what's happening across the country in real time as it happens. And we try to put it in some form of context where we say, okay, this is what we know about how these things tend to unfold. This is what we're seeing. This is what to expect. And that's it. It's called In Time. It's if you look for it on YouTube, you usually find the movie
first.
But first before you. So it's In Time show, or put my name in. And I also have a personal channel. It's been a little neglected, but In Time is for the most part what I've been putting most of my work into for the last almost a year now.
Nice, yeah, and which I was actually on months ago. I don't remember exactly when, but I was on a while back talking about Planned Parenthood stuff. Which, didn't get to talk to you on that one, which I was a little.
That was the one actually where I think that was the one. Was that the one where I was out because of COVID? Because I did get COVID, so I missed 6. I was out for 6 months. I was still doing some of those shows, but you can see me. I look like death warmed over for the most part. I remember
they were saying in the Discord, they're just all like, he's not feeling so hot, and I was like, that's not fun.
I don't even remember most of that whole block of my life.
But we're definitely glad that you're still here with us. So definitely, for sure.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for being here. Thank you so much for being my first guest and for being willing to go with the flow with everything. I really appreciate that.
My pleasure.
So we can follow In Time on Twitter. I think I have the links. I have the links below in the description to you In Time and to the YouTube channel as well. And in case you are interested in any of the Divine Disbelief stuff, you can follow Divine Disbelief on Twitter. We're Divine Disbelief. You can follow me on Twitter. I am Motel Cowboy. We have a Patreon. We have Podfan. We have Buy Me a Coffee. We have all of that stuff if you would like to support our channel. And I believe that is it for us. Thank you all so much for tuning in to our very first Explain Like I'm 5. And we will catch y'all next time. Bye, guys.